right, great. We can start. So, what I was going to say, I think when I was asked what I wanted to talk about here at Plan B, I immediately came up with the concept of I would like to have a masterclass about Bitcoin treasury companies, because obviously has been, I would say, one of the hottest things in capital markets. And it's very interesting because I've been in capital markets for over 15 years, running a consultancy agency, and in 2015 I got into Bitcoin. And I was also working into that space, and it was kind of having, from one side, there was the Bitcoin crypto side, and then there was the capital markets and an executive position, you know, helping with fundraise. And it was kind of like, looking, I was running two separate business, and finally see the two things are coming together. It's very interesting. So I'm going to tell you something that was very interesting. So I was at the Michael Saylor event in Orlando in May this year. And obviously, it was all about Bitcoin for corporation. And when I got back, my phone started ringing. So many CEO of public listed company in the UK, they contact me, say, oh, we want to buy Bitcoin, we want to get into this. And that was quite, it was kind of, all right, yeah. And that's when the hype started, right? And that obviously, the market, there's been some kind of correction. We have seen many companies listing, many struggling, the M&A has compressed, and now we are thinking what is going to be next, why an investor should look at those equities, and what are the metrics that can help you to better assess a Bitcoin treasury company. And one of the things that I think is very important, that's why I wanted to focus the presentation, is really sustainability. So how can you have a Bitcoin treasury strategy that is actually sustainable, and in that way you can be a valuable stock that investors want to get involved, they want to back, and that's basically what I'm going to be focusing on today. So, okay, the sustainability gap. So one of the things that corporations they don't understand still is kind of the value of Bitcoin. They obviously are all based on a fiat system, and they see, let's say, fiat that is built on trust in institutions. So you need to trust the bank, you need to trust the government, you need to trust the monetary policy as well. They don't actually understand the disruptive actually power of Bitcoin that is built on trustless code. At the same time, fiat are inflationary, where Bitcoin is only 21 million. So there are all these elements that actually is quite natural to understand that Bitcoin is a better asset than actually putting our assets into fiat instrument, which is what many of these corporate treasury are doing. So for them, safety is low volatility, but in reality, what they are actually backing their reserves is much more volatile than Bitcoin. So obviously they hold a credit-based reserve like cash, bond, deposit, and exactly the balance sheet seems stable, but it's not really. And why Bitcoin is digital capital, why is the most high performance assets, is because it's got certain characteristics that make it so. And the value, I mean, even looking at the value of fiat currency, they have been losing value, I think some even 90% in 50 years, where Bitcoin we saw has gone up millions and million percentages, right? So it's kind of interesting, but I think the old-fashioned corporate world, when it sees fiat as a safe, as a safe way where they can invest their cash, is actually all the opposite. But obviously education is very important for them, and is for corporates as well, for many traditional investors. So here I just got a couple of charts to show you the U.S. inflation and how the purchasing power of fiat is losing value, and then on the other side we see Bitcoin, how much is has gone up in just over a decade, really. So what are Bitcoin Treasury Company? Because that is a very important question that you should ask. So Bitcoin Treasury Company is a company that is recapitalizing on Bitcoin. And there are different ways that can do that. So, and then I put 3 categories of Bitcoin Treasury companies. But what they are, so they can look at their Bitcoin as a strategic asset, or they can actually engineer their balance sheet on Bitcoin. And that is actually what is Strategy doing in the US and Metaplanet started to do. So that's kind of like one opportunity for Bitcoin Treasury Company in that new era. But it all started with accumulation, right? That's what started in 2020 with Strategy. So there are mainly 3 types of Bitcoin Treasury companies. There is, and I can probably go back to that, which is much more interesting. So there is the poor player, there is the hybrid operator, and there is the strategic holder. So if we just go back quickly here, the pure player is basically somebody that uses its equity as a Bitcoin proxy, and the example is Strategy. Then you have got a strategic hybrid, and I'm going to go a bit more into details later, but has got an operating business and is using Bitcoin as a strategic asset. And we have got, different, even the miners will be part of that. And then you have strategic holders, which is what many publicly listed companies have started to do this year. So they've got an operating business and they are using Bitcoin more in a passive way. So it's still a strategic reserve, but it's more like a way to hedge really against inflation and monetary debasement. So here we can see some kind of more details about the 3 type of Bitcoin Treasury companies. That depends really on the level of conviction, the level of leverage, and also the business model as well. So the poor player is quite interesting because they are kind of like a proxy of a Bitcoin ETF, but with a corporate wrapper, basically. And obviously their price is very connected to the Bitcoin price, so they could go up quite a lot. It's much more a higher risk, and they depend on the performances Bitcoin, as I said. And some good example I would say is really Strategy, and Metaplanet is following it. When you have so that is important to understand, because as an investor, you kind of really need to understand what you want to play. If you are happy with a high risk, you have a high conviction, and you really believe in the value on Bitcoin, then obviously you want to stay on a poor player. Where if instead you see this leverage opportunity investing in a Bitcoin treasury company may be a little bit too risky, so then maybe you want to go to a company that has got already a business. And for example, I can name a few. I mean, Curl is a good example. Or for example, in the UK, there will be the Smart Web company. They've got, a web designing business. It's not making a lot of money, but, it's still generating some cash. And why I'm saying that is important, because especially when we talk about public listed company, we need to remember that in order to be listed, you have got quite a lot of cost. So there is not just the management fee, there is the listing, there is the lawyers. You have got all a range or cost that just the listing imply, that you need to be able to serve that cost. So you cannot just raise money and just buy Bitcoin without having any other cash that can pay for all the other expenses that you have as a public listed company. So that will get you in trouble. So that's why I'm thinking, as the market corrects, what is going to happen now is that the company, they are not going to be able to have a sustainable treasury strategy. They're probably going to die. Or they are going to be bought by other company. I'm going to come back on that in a second, but I just wanted to kind of make clear. So obviously the upside of the hybrid operator is lower because they are also focusing on on their business, but those type of company can also use some capital they raise through, issuing more shares or, for example, debt to buy more Bitcoin. But they do have got something that can serve their costs, so they have some kind of cash flow. The strategic holder, as I mentioned before, good example could be Tesla and Block. So what they do, they have got a business that generates revenue, and they might have profit, and with that, then they decide to allocate part of their cash towards Bitcoin. Why? Because is better asset reserves, hedge against inflation, and is a safer way to kind of hold your reserves. So it's defensive, okay, an inflation hedge, and then obviously become a narrative, right? If is obviously good, the media likes that, so it's kind of a bit more spicy if you are trying to kind of make your company more attractive and more the media likes it. So that they are a little bit more conservative. Now, there was a question that I found it quite interesting. Somebody asked Michael Saylor, if there is a recorrection in the Bitcoin Treasury space, would you consider buying another Bitcoin Treasury company? And that's what many people are, they might say, okay, so some Bitcoin Treasury company now, they are trading below NAV, so why they could be, acquisition target? And Michael came up with a very interesting answer, and he said, no, I will never do that. And then he explained that he will never do it because he's going to add additional complexity to a story that is very simple. And strategy is actually a very simple story. We buy Bitcoin, we leverage our Bitcoin, we issue Bitcoin products, and we sell those to buy more Bitcoin. So it's kind of a story feeding himself, but it's really simple. And if you buy another business, you need to deal with all the legacy of this business. And then you are responsible, obviously, what do you want to do with this business? And for investors, I mean, even what I find out myself working in this industry in capital market for 15 years, investors really like stories that are simple. So when you have two things or three things, many companies, they think, okay, we do that, and they think the investor likes them more because there is more upside. There isn't really. Investors want to see management team, they are focused on one thing, and they actually deliver. And I'm saying deliver, maybe, I want to say emphasis in a strong way, and I was just saying that with a friend of mine just early, is there are so many great ideas, right? But teams they are able to execute, there aren't. And that, I think, is a very important aspect. And that's why if you see around and you analyze different Bitcoin Treasury company, the one they are going to succeed are the one with the right people there. So you buy into the people. As an investor, never buy in the business model. First of all, you buy in the people. Then you look at what they are doing, then you look at the sector. So there are different, things that you should do, but definitely execution is paramount when it comes to Bitcoin Treasury company. Because then you go into times where there is a bear market, there is volatility, and if you don't have conviction, then your business is going to suffer and shareholders are going to lose money. And trust me, I lost money in public markets a lot, just because there's been management change, and I didn't buy in the management, I was buying into the trend, which you never should do. Never buy into the trend. So that's just a timeline. So obviously we saw strategy was the first one, and then I think last year we were 60 Bitcoin Treasury company. Now we are over 770. I think 172. That's one of the latest data that we got. And it's astonishing, some of the data, like total value Bitcoin holding 117 billion, right? And that's, it's just, I think in just 1 year, even in the last 6 months, the space has grown so much that yeah, it's just great. And so actually Tesla was a very, very early adopter. And then you have got in 2022, there was Seminole Scientific that now is being bought by Strike. Then we have obviously Theta, and then the miners also got in at that stage with Marathon was one of the leading one. 2023, we see more miners getting into the space. And finally, 2025 is kind of a cohort, a new company that said, right, our story is not attractive anymore, and I know many, so what do? We buy Bitcoin and we put on the treasury, and their price went up. I saw some crazy number where stock trade, really many multiples, and then eventually the price got down when the NAV compressed. So we have done that. Okay, so this slide is quite interesting because Bitcoin treasury companies are not normal companies, right? Are a new type of companies. So Bitcoiners and the market, what I say is because the market doesn't know how to evaluate these companies. So Bitcoiners came up with some metrics to assign value to their company, and I just listed there a few. So the BTC, Bitcoin per share, so they represent the exposure to Bitcoin per each share. Then the MNAV that has been used as an indicator to establish if a company is traded at a premium or not. Then you have got BTC yield that now everybody's talking about. You basically leverage your Bitcoin, you generate a return. And then you have got data covers that is more kind of like a short-term metrics. But what I'm saying that is because those are the metrics that has been used by the Bitcoin community to justify the big valuation that we have seen in the last few months. But in my view, and especially when I talk to many fund managers in the UK specifically, they are very traditional. They don't like those metrics, right? They look at different type of metrics. And what I think is that there is kind of a true in the middle. Those metrics are great to measure market sentiment, and also they are great they are more like trading metrics, right? But what really matters are the way that you manage your balance sheet, you manage your liquidity. You are also able to leverage your Bitcoin, but in a way that is sustainable. And then is the BTC strategy policy. So that is something that has to be built in a way that you can carry on accumulating. There is no way you can have a treasury policy if you cannot sustain that. If you don't have cash to buy more Bitcoin, then at some point you need to stop the treasury, and at some point you might need to sell your Bitcoin because you're going to have a cost that you need. You need to pay your lawyers. You have got stuff that you need to. If you have debt, you need to pay your interest. And then I say execution of the management team, and then obviously sustainability through cycle. Now, many of these Bitcoin treasury companies, they haven't been through a bear market. And this is a big thing. Many of you, they are Bitcoiners. You have been through the bear market. You have seen your holdings going down 70%, 50%. I saw it. And what do? You just have to hodl. And then eventually everything comes back. But if you are a public listed company, how can you do that if you can't hodl? And if you have taken over debt that is really leverage and you have got margin calls, you're going to be struggling a lot. So the bull market is not going to stay here forever. And you need to be able to hold to all these strategies. So volatility is vitality. That's what Michael Saylor say, and that's why you pay. There is high risk, but there is high reward at the same time, and that's why there is performance. There is a better performance, but it's not everything is not roses, or is not everything bright. I think there are a few things that we should actually learn from traditional finance in order to assess assess the company. So great to have these new metrics, they're great, but at the same time, I will be very careful in just using those metrics when you are evaluating a Bitcoin treasury company. And that's something that I come up with, having working with different corporates and public listed company in the last 15 years. I think there are 4 pillars. And those being the policy. When I say policy, is really the Bitcoin strategy. And the Bitcoin strategy must be something, is really linked to governance. So when you have a good company governance, you have a board that has got conviction. All the directors, they are all educated about what is Bitcoin. They all want to be part of something. They are big believers. They all have skills they can contribute to the table. That's really important. Then I said execution, and then there is the leverage discipline. What I mean with that, you can take debt, no problem. You can issue shares, no problem. You can do ATM or whatever, that's all okay. But at the same time, you need to be disciplined in the bull market, because when the bear market comes, then you need to be able to face that. And then communication, obviously, I come from a PR background, so communication is definitely something that you need to do constantly with the market. It's quite interesting that some of the Bitcoin treasury companies that I know, they used to have a very traditional shareholder base. And when they got into Bitcoin, there was this new wave of Bitcoin investors. They started to, become part of, obviously, the shareholder base. And so those are, people that you need to constantly communicate. And was a quite of a different cohort, right, to have. Some of them very maximalist, and some of them really very active as well. So you might gonna get some active shareholders. They also, because they've got voting power, they could, depending on how much of your shares they hold, they can be a problem. So a problem might not be a problem, but is great support, but could be maybe a challenge. So important to have a constant communication, and also even review the situation as well as the market changes. Then you have got performance, and that's where I think the hybrid operator or the strategic hodl could be interesting, is that making sure that you have cash flow and operational strength to be able to keep accumulating, and also build actually a treasury. There is a treasury, so you're not just playing into the volatility. Having balance sheet resilience, that's really important. And then, just continue, capital allocation. So the performance is important. The metrics that we saw before can be used to evaluate the performance, but really, I think the cash flow operational strength, in my view, is really key for many of these public listed companies that are coming to market, because it's not. I think the trend is definitely finished, and when you go through the crypto cycle, I've seen that many times. At the beginning, Bitcoin raise, and then you have got more the spices play. In the last cycle, it was about all the other altcoins, and then there was the NFT. You don't need to be too clever. Everything you buy is going to go up. And that's happening in 2025 with the Bitcoin treasury companies. I traded many, and you don't really need to do many due diligence. It's okay, just buy them. They're going to go up, and sell them the week after. However, this is not really, it's not going to stay forever. So I think it's very important, as an investor, when you look at your investment, to understand where you are in the cycle, and just play with also protection, and that's where it comes the third pillar. So when it comes to protection, in order to deploy, so you have a playbook as a Bitcoin treasury company, you have a strategy, but in order to execute on that, you do need partners. When I talk about partners, I mean custodians, right? You cannot hold your Bitcoin in the CEO, digital wallet, and maybe the chairman has got another key. It doesn't work like that. You need to have a proper framework to have institutional custody. You need to have a transparent governance, and that's come back to have a good management team that is able, to is educated, has got conviction, but is also transparent to the shareholders. And then you need to have an audit-ready structure, because though we are talking about new public listed company, they are actually adding a very innovative asset. So your auditors, you need to help them. So you need to make sure that that is also in place. So there is the custodians, there is the auditors, there is counterparty discipline. And remember, when you are, as a corporation, you are going to give away, there is always a trade-off, right? And the trade-off is on the risk that you take with your partners. You need to give away some power to whatever you do with your Bitcoin, even just on the custody side. So just make sure that who is the custodian of the Bitcoin of the company that you are investing is actually somebody that has been in the space for some time. They have got credibility, and they have the right infrastructure in place. I know a few, and happy to share if you want to ask afterwards. And then perception, which is very interesting, because perception is where the premium is built, really. And perception comes to the market sentiment. So obviously the way that you communicate and engage with your investors is very important. I was quite astonished when I was in Orlando with Michael to actually understand that the shareholder base of Strategy is their main investor arms. So they have a very strong investor base. They basically do some very deep analysis that many investment analysts wouldn't be able to do. They are all over social media. They host the spaces. They do podcasts. They are doing most of the promotion. I mean, Michael is great, but he has got these solid cornerstone retail investors that is helping on the liquidity of the stock, but is also helping on different views. And if there is something that they spot that is not right or whatever, they will raise it up. So it's like a very nice, transparent engagement from the investor side. And I think that's what all the Bitcoin treasury companies should aim for, to have an investor base that is active. And that's really a good indication if you are an investor looking at Bitcoin treasury company. Then obviously there is investor education. So what you try to do is not just to onboard Bitcoiners, but you want to onboard the masses. You want to get traditional investors to look at this new asset class and why they should buy into your company, what value you are bringing, what you are planning to do. So as a management team, you still need to always educate, always evolve, and then see what you can do when you get to a critical mass. And then obviously there is disclosure, right? So any kind of problems or anything, you need to be clear up front. I think I really appreciate when David Bailey from Nakamoto, he came out on social media and he said, that's the situation. If you don't like it, you are not type of shareholder that we should have on our register. And obviously with social media, most of these CEOs, they are there, they're very active, and in a way they are kind of doing their own PR, and that's great to see. And yes, resiliency isn't built in the balance sheet, but is really a behavior, because it encompasses a different kind of aspect, the way that you run a business. Right, so where we are in the cycle, and that's quite interesting, because obviously as a Bitcoin treasury company or a Bitcoin investor, you want to know that, because otherwise you will wait to buy when it's cheaper, but you can never it's difficult to catch the wave. That's why buying dollar cost averaging, boring buying is basically the safest way. And talking to different people, different Bitcoiners, and people that have been in the space for quite some time. Some of them, they believe there's not going to be another bear market, like a serious one. Some others, they still think there's going to be the bear market is usually every 4 years, and it's kind of tied up to the halving, right? So what I think is that because we have got such a good how can I say, with the ETFs, we have got now institutions getting into the space. So they have been driving massive adoption of Bitcoin, and there is much more that can come from them, especially when advisors start to advise sovereign wealth fund, high net worth investor family offices to get into that, and now they can do it. They couldn't do it before that. So the institutional side is definitely something that is going to have an impact on the 4-year cycle. So now it's not just retail demand for Bitcoin, there is institution, and then on the top of that, there is obviously regulation. So we all remember when China banned Bitcoin mining, when the SEC was creating problem in the US. So regulation has always been a bottleneck, right? And the media was always there to pick up the wrong headline and say, okay, crypto is dead, Bitcoin is scam. Then there was the energy problem, right? Bitcoin consume more energy than Argentina, but nobody talks about AI consuming energy, right? Why? So that's interesting. So now nobody talks about Bitcoin and energy is not a problem anymore. Actually, I actually think the banking system consumes more energy than Bitcoin, but I think consider is the two things. So the institution side and the regulation side. I think the 4 years cycle is not going to be the same. We will see correction, but I doubt that we will see a strong, downturn unless something really bad is going to happen. And, it could always happen. We got COVID, quantum is out there, which I think now Bitcoin has started to talk more about. And I don't think that quantum is 10 years away. Quantum, and by the way, CBDCs are quantum proof and Bitcoin isn't. But Bitcoin can easily, fix that. But it's something that us as a community, and I'm quite keen to say here because I think it's important, we need to start to look at quantum and what Bitcoin and the Bitcoin community should do to be able to be ready when times comes or, prepare in advance. And it's not talked enough. I mean, there are people that are talking about it. There are companies working on it. But quantum is, is something to watch, and that's why I'm saying it. Obviously, we have got, coming back to this, how a Bitcoin treasury company can, stay within the cycle is all about how do you behave, is how do you define a strategy that is sustainable. You have the bull case where obviously you try to capitalize on that, so you execute, you raise as much capital as you can, but obviously be cautious on the leverage that you take. You keep communicating, you have conviction, but you are not arrogant, right? Because bear market is going to come anyway, or more volatile is going to come. So it's not about ego. And that's important because when you look about management teams, it should be about shareholders. Shareholders are your CEO as a CEO, if that makes sense. It's not about just you making money. First of all, it's about making money for your shareholders. And I think when you are listening CEO, telling what they're doing, I was just going to say selling the story, but that's probably the wrong word to use. You want to make sure they put the shareholders always first. And the bear case, obviously, what do you do there? Then you need to huddle. You need to be resilient and strong enough to say, okay, maybe we cannot accumulate as many Bitcoin as we can unless we have got profit, for example, we have cash flow, we have got revenue that we can use. You need to manage your expenses very well. And this is interesting because there were some miners in the past. They were not able to manage their cash very well, or they pay CEOs big bonuses. I mean, we all see the story of riots. There are a few that are quite cautious with the cash. I mean, one example could be Hive Digital Technologies. I know they are very, very cautious the way they spend the money. But, I think that's also a very interesting element. Some CEO of Bitcoin treasury companies, I know they are not paying themselves a high salary. Is all the upside is in the stock. And if you look at Elon Musk, how he make all this money, same way. Is all the upside. There was a time where he had really a massive upside in the stock, and Tesla was almost going bust, but he managed He said, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then, you know, and then he just became a billionaire or whatever. But I think alignment with the shareholder alignment for management is really important, and is a key thing that as an investor you should look when you are analyzing a company. And then BTC trades sideways. That's obviously, you know, where most of the time we are, right? So what do you do? Is to say, keep executing with clarity, be transparent, be consistent. Integrity is very important, and has always been something that I really believe in. Is really not something that you can make up. Integrity should be one of your core value, and don't lose focus. Don't lose focus. And volatility obviously is going to be your test. If you can go through volatility, through the cycle, if there are still, then you have got something that is sustainable. The investor playbook, right? So here I kind of like wanted to give some of the option of what investor could look at, and then what CEO, the CEO playbook will be coming back to the 4P. But for the investor playbook, so first of all, you kind of like need to understand what type of investor you are when it comes to like the Bitcoin space. If you just want exposure to the raw assets, the high performance, high volatility, you know, then buy Bitcoin. There is nothing better. You can even self-custody, and you don't have any counterparty risk. If you want perhaps to get, you want to take the chance to get more risk, but you really believe in a management team, then what you do? Then you delegate conviction to a Bitcoin treasury company, to an equity, right? So you have the upside on the Bitcoin, then you have the upside of the company. It's the same as investing in gold company. You get the upside on the gold, and then you get the upside on the management being able to execute on the strategy. Then you have the option, obviously, to buy into ETFs. So which could be convenient, could be a diversification if you have got other investment, you know, you don't want to have any headache to buy Bitcoin yourself, you do, you know, just buy ETF and then you are okay. And then you have got, which is quite interesting, Treasury Preferred Credit Instrument, which kind of like yield innovation is what strategy is really doing. So using Bitcoin and making product on it to build a new digital credit system. And those are quite interesting. I mean, Saylor put together 4 Bitcoin credit instrument, and all of them, they serve a different type of investor. And I have a slide on that as well. But, you know, there are different trade-offs on control, liquidity, convexity, governance, resilience. But just to give you, so first of all, understand what type of investor you are, and then pick and choose and build your own portfolio, you know, and then do all of it if you want to, which is, you know, what I do. And then we said again, you know, the CEO playbook, I would just repeat what Saylor said, keep it simple, right? That doesn't mean just doing Bitcoin. You can have an operating business that makes money, and then, you know, you hedge with Bitcoin, but just be very simple so investors straight away understand what you do, be transparent, keep communicating, build your credibility, execute with discipline. As I said, shareholders are your boss, and they are really your the people that you need to build value for, as well as yourself, obviously. Some case studies, strategy. The first, Metaplanet is following, and then there is like a few quotes of a few companies. We have the Smarter Web, H100, you know, GameStop that got into late. We have Capital B. We have got many other. I mean, in the UK there is one, not every month, but you know, they just keep popping up. The one that survive might not be all of them, but definitely is great to see that more companies are adopting Bitcoin. So I think there is space for everyone. So just get in the space, but not all are going to be the same. That's what I'm trying to say. Oh, that's just the 100 Bitcoin treasury company. So strategy, Marathon Digital Holdings. So that's a big miner. Then you have got 21 Capital. I saw Jack was here. We have got Metaplanet. yeah, so you see the miners, obviously they are mining Bitcoin, so they build a hodl, which is very important for them. Most of them, they also got into the AI space, so that gives them, you know, a dual prong strategy. And obviously AI is a very interesting space to be. Yeah, and then you see, you know, for example, the Smart Web, that was an IPO in April in the UK. The company got to 1 billion. And it was a big story in the UK because it just went up so much just from retail, mainly driven by retail investors, because as institution in the UK, they were very not suspicious, but you know, still not onboarded on the Bitcoin story. So it's quite amazing what they have done, really. And they have got a web designing business as well. It's not bringing much. I think 90 grand a year is not going to pay for the PLC, but you know, still is going to get something, and maybe they will grow with AI and some other, you know, plans they have got. You see publicly listed company, they are the one that now are holding most of the Bitcoin, private companies, ETFs, governments. I mean, the United States, we know, is ahead of everyone, we all know, and is a great example. And that has been really possible because most of the miners based there, but also because what's happened when Trump got into power, he has been able to understand the value that Bitcoin and crypto in general was bringing, and he managed to have legislators actually supporting his plan, and he put together a team of really like-minded people. He's backing many initiatives, including Tether. So I just think that is great what the US is doing, and hopefully other countries will follow. I mean, the UK is there, but even though is I think a little bit far behind. Then here I just show you the demand for Bitcoin that has been is so big compared to the supply of Bitcoin. So there is much more institutional demand than actually the Bitcoin they actually mine. I think is 4 in 1. So it's quite astonishing that there is much more, you know, that can be done into this space. And that's why, you know, I think the fact the institution got into Bitcoin, that's really a game changer for the Bitcoin cycle, and also for all the capital markets. Strategy, I just want a couple of slides, you know, about strategy, because I'm a big fan of them, and really amazing team. Raise lots of capital, hold many Bitcoin. That's kind of like a snapshot. I think they are 81 billion. I think I checked today as a market cap. But the very interesting thing is that they started accumulating Bitcoin, and now they are becoming more like architects. So they are building a Bitcoin-backed credit market, which is really pioneering. So building new credit instrument backed by Bitcoin, which is what all the institutions want, right? There are different type of institutional investors. They just want cash flow. They just want yield with no risk. So what do you do? And he came up with those 4 instruments. So they're very different for different type of investors. So when you have a junior, for example, Stride is a perpetual preferred, is a junior preferred, high risk, high reward, is a fixed 10%, but is trading at a market discount, and is non-cumulative, so you kind of get highest yield on that. And then you have got a senior preferred with Stripe, which is still paying 10%, but is over collateralized, is cumulative, and is just, you know, a little bit less risky, and the interest is still quite interesting. I mean, if you think that if you put your money in a bank account in Switzerland, I think it's minus 50 basis points. If you put them in Japan, it's plus 50 basis points. If you put it in the UK, it will be maybe 300 basis point. In the US, 400 basis points. So really, you're not really making any money if you put your money in the bank, and then you have to pay tax on it. And actually, those instruments, they have also tax, deferred tax as well. Then there was Strike, which was quite interesting because also it was convertible into strategy stock. So lower dividend, is cumulative, is fixed, but combine a bit of exposure to Bitcoin and also to the equity as well. And then you have got Stretch, which is the last one that he issued, but is also one of the most interesting because the dividend is adjustable. So it's variable. That means that it's paid every month. And the idea was like there are some investors, they want to have exposure to kind of like convertible notes, senior debt, but at the same time, they don't want, they want something that comes in every month, and that was, in a way, it's like having your money in a bank account, but it's not really a bank account. And then obviously you have got a strategy that has done an amazing performance, over the last 5 years, really. So sustainable balance sheet, you build on sound assets, the value nobody can print, that's Bitcoin. Disciplined capital structure, so you have got a policy that is strong, you have got execution, you take on debt, but with the right terms. And that means, and then you have got liquidity as well. So you have got operational strength, you have got liquidity buffers that you have built, so you don't need to sell under pressure. And then you have got governance and integrity, which I think is very important. And governance builds trust, integrity compounds, and you always, as I said, always buy in the team and not in the company. Sound money, sound in the execution, strong governance, sustainable capital. Future of treasury company, resilience. So I think there is a future for company. They are resilient. They can bear the volatility. They have got true character. They don't, they don't feel under pressure. They are innovative, like strategy. It's not that everybody needs to do what strategy does, and I think it's quite interesting. For example, Metaplanet is adjusting to the Japanese market. So each market has got different ways to go about. But definitely using Bitcoin to re-engineer your balance sheet is quite interesting, and then you need to have conviction because that is what is going to help you as well, and that's what people trust you for. So Bitcoin Treasury company are not speculation anymore, but they are really the innovation of capital markets. And that's it. So a couple of things that I do. I have a Bitcoin for Investor newsletter that goes out every week. If you want to scan it and then subscribe, we get maybe everything that you need to know in the Bitcoin space, all main news and some analysis as well. We have done a corporate analysis of Bitcoin treasury companies in the UK. And then I have a YouTube channel if you want to check some of the interviews that I've done with some of the CEO and leaders in the Bitcoin space, really, not just treasury companies. But if any question, please ask. Do you invest in Bitcoin treasury companies? Yes? Okay. Which ones? Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Stefania. Congrats. Great presentation.
Oh, thank you.
So technically, it's a balance between CEO, the board, and the people that is pushing the treasury idea. I am talking right now of bringing all this knowledge to a company that has never seen Bitcoin as a way out. No. So considering this, if we work with DCA, if we have the proper knowledge, and we apply or we reapply any of these strategies that you mentioned, for example, the strategy I think is the most successful one. There is any other ingredient? I mean, we know Bitcoin, no? Up, down, up, down, up, down. So how can you manage, for example, a board with people that doesn't know anything about this.
Sack them. Or
All right.
or convert them. There is only that thing. Why the UK has a problem? Because the FCA doesn't understand crypto. So the people from the regulatory perspective have been making so hard for investors. I mean, even the ETN that now they approved. I phoned my broker and I said, can I buy an ETN? Oh no, we cannot buy yet. But they have been approved a week ago. Oh, but we haven't got the clarification yet. So I don't try to change somebody that has not been. So either they change because they want to, because they have the holy moment that I had in 2015. Everybody can have it. And then since then you understand really the value of Bitcoin, or they go. That's the way that I will do it. And you bring in other people that have got the conviction. Because otherwise it's not, you already start with the wrong foot.
Perfect. Next question. I know that it's not going to be only one answer. Okay,
Yeah.
It's going to depend of the company and you know the mindset of the board. But auction A, liquidity, auction B, debt, I mean, bonds or anything. What is the best way to approach this from the perspective of a company that doesn't know anything about Bitcoin treasuries? How would be the best primary strategy as a plan A, then a plan B, or whatever, and regarding, of course, depending of the evolution of the company and the treasury, they are going to go with more aggressivity. But in this moment, for a company that doesn't know anything about it, what is going to be the first step?
So if the company has got any revenue coming from anywhere, the company will be selling maybe product, or maybe just take the cash that you have in the bank or the money that you make and start to buy Bitcoin. That's easier. And even, I think you raise a good point. You want to do in stages. You don't want to, just, okay, go, now we come in. Because it's difficult to come and just do Bitcoin. So the reason why strategy has been able to create those products that I mentioned before is because it got to a critical mass where it was big enough that it was able to issue preferred stock, credit instrument. Another company is not going to be able to do it. You don't have the critical mass. Nobody knows you. You cannot sell anything like that. So you want to do in stages. So stage one will be how much you have got in the bank and buy Bitcoin. Do you make money, put together a policy as a company, then maybe buy Bitcoin every month based on the money that comes in? Could be any company, right? Even a web designer. You make 10 grand a month. I'm just saying some numbers, stupid, small number, but, you put 8,000 in Bitcoin, whatever. And then you start at some point to look at debt. But the debt should be long-term. That's like the element that, you want to make sure that the debt is long-term, because Bitcoin is only going one way, is going up. But there is volatility in the middle. And if you have a 3 years debt, high interest, no good.
Finally, I know that this question is going to sound stupid for a Bitcoiner, but I am not talking about a Bitcoiner. I am talking about a company that is trying to explore this. Self-custody, custody to a third party, and even you mentioned an ETF or several instruments, which is the best way. I know that is not only a good answer, but I would like to know your thinking about it.
Maybe all three. I mean, it really depends on the company. If you have got strong conviction and the management is a Bitcoiner team, they wouldn't do ETFs. But if you're talking about an healthcare company that is getting into Bitcoin, then do the plan vanilla, buy some ETF and use it as an edge against inflation, and don't even do, self-custody is tough. I mean, you don't want to put a gun in your head because you are traveling and you have the key, the CEO has the key, that just, I think there are counterparties, like for example, Zappo Bank is one of the greatest custodian. There are many others, but those guys I mentioned because they've been in the space in 2013 and they're very credible. So yes, you need to get the right party to do that. And also there is a lot of work even to do the custody, and I think trying to be clever and managing yourself is not really the best answer. But that's what you do as a Bitcoiner team. You go to the people that you can trust. I mean, there are certain levels of, there is always the risk, but I will probably do like that. If you are still in the kind of middle ground where you are building the strategy, you're not too sure, you don't know yet, you don't have the plan already, already done, then do ETF and start to do that. It's still good. You're still able to announce it to your investor and say, we are getting exposure to Bitcoin, and then you have no risk, right? Or
Perfect.
less.
Thank you so much.
So I gather that you work in the UK. We
Yeah.
changed the name of our company in 2021, and we introduced the name blockchain, and Barclays closed our bank account.
Yeah.
We tried to open a bank account for a new company 2 weeks ago, which was dealing with cryptos, and Revolut didn't open us a bank account. Acquis issued, after the Smart company, a guideline where Bitcoin Treasury or crypto treasury companies are not allowed to list. So when do you think that this climate will change in
Yeah.
the UK?
I've familiarized with you a lot because I got my Barclays account closed 3 years ago because I was buying £1,000 a month Bitcoin. And that's what they did. A friend of mine was buying through, what was the, Lloyds. They also got the same. So there are banks that Bitcoin-friendly banks, like for example Zappo does that. That they can help you with the banking aspect. The main things is about your business, and the FCA makes a problem if your assets, more than 50% of your assets is Bitcoin. That's no good. So that's the problem that is making the UK. You need to have a business, and I know because I'm going through an IPO where you need to show that you have a business that is more than 50%, and then you have Bitcoin, they are okay. The banking is a challenge, and I know that Nigel Farage is trying to change it, and hopefully, we get somewhere, but there are options that you can look into.
Okay. So after 3 years, we finally managed to get a bank account with the High Street Bank,
Okay.
Santander.
Brilliant.
And they, before opening the account, has had to sign a statement where we promise not to do any business in the crypto sector. I think this is appalling.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry. Switzerland, we are back into negative interest rate again.
Yeah.
And there is no Bitcoin treasury company. Why do you think it's not there yet?
Because we have seen, because there's been a bigger hype in Bitcoin treasury company, and that has impacted all market. I mean, the NAV, the MNAV, it was crazy. And I think when you get through and then there is a correction, the investors are more cautious, and there is, and it's become even harder to list a company. As I said, I'm going through an IPO with a company, and the FCA has been asking so many questions that keeps delaying, and so that's why I'm saying that the strongest one, they will get there. They will raise capital, they will make money, but we are not in the hype anymore. So if you are planning to get into, if you thought there is a trend now, there isn't a trend. Now is about choosing the one rather than buying into any coin like you could have done. Many of you would have done the trade. You list on Coinbase, I'm going to buy this coin and then sell it. I mean, that was 3 years ago, but it's not hype anymore. I think the market is correct, and now just really buying into the team. But for the UK, it's challenging, but it's possible. There are a few IPOs under the way. They are strong, solid companies, and they will pivot. I mean, as a company, it's not just about execution. I think it's also about adaptability, because this industry is changing so much that you need to be able to pivot. Don't get too attached, pivot, and just try to innovate as well. Get the right people on board. Be honest. There is something wrong, just say it. And, it will pay off.
Hi. I think one potential for Bitcoin Treasury company is to tap into local capital markets and issue some credit instruments. Have you any thoughts on how capital and credit markets on different locations in the world compare?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So, in the US, capital markets are better. So you can raise more money, you have ETMs, you have got, a company that is valued 600 million in the US is not going to be the equivalent in another market. So I think the US is like a really big market for raising capital. Bigger investment banks are there. Even from a retail investor perspective, I think the US is definitely where you can get more hype, more money, build a stronger business, because you are able to. For them, 100 million is nothing. You go in the UK, it's 3 million. It's already, oh God, we got to the market. And then in the US, they look at you and say, who are you? 3 million? They just think you're mad. So I definitely think the US is great. But then there are opportunities, you see, like the EU is really a great opportunity. The UK is an opportunity, but when you analyze the different, and then there are emerging markets as well. I mean, there is a stock market in Dubai that should be, being great and doing Bitcoin Treasury. I don't know why, but they are not, doing it enough. But I'm saying there are different elements that you look at. So definitely you want to look institutional capital. You want to see about retail investor activity and how much, investors are actually active in capital markets, because we are not talking about investing tokens here. We are not saying about investing in Bitcoin as a raw asset. We are talking about investing in a publicly listed company that doesn't trade 24/7. You have got a broker, so you also want to look at the infrastructure that is behind it. So how strong are the capital markets? In the UK they are, but the FCA and the governments are not so strong, or are not so on board, let's say. Gold is a different story in the UK, because investors would like gold. And Bitcoin is digital gold, but anyway, that's another debate. So I will definitely look on the retail side. I will look on the institutional side, because you need capital for this. And then you are going to look also at the infrastructure, so the financial infrastructure. So I would say the US is the best, but there are opportunities in the UK and in the EU as well for the right players.
First, great presentation. So since you know this space much more than me, I did like the stress on volatility.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if, as far as you know, there are any of the companies that you mentioned that are sort of internalizing hedging practices, so that the hedge strategy is embedded in the price of the share, or is the hedging against volatility still only on the investor? In other words, I go along with strategy, and at the same time, if I want to hedge the volatility, I don't know, buy
so
put options, things like that.
I know what you mean, like buy call option and stuff like that. So there is a company I'm working with. We are going through an IPO that is going to exactly do that. It's an hedge fund. So that's an idea that is coming is coming up.
You haven't seen anything like that already?
That's
in
the only thing that I've seen that I'm
Okay.
working on, is a new IPO on Aquis in London. But it's definitely going to be something that company will be doing, and it's definitely great because you want to be able to, make money, right? Still, so
well,
then
it
you
would
can.
simplify my life even further, because if the company can hedge against the volatility,
Yes.
then I just buy the stock, and I know if things go up, well, if things go
Yes.
down, the hedge is already embedded in the price.
Yes, so I think there are, as I said, but otherwise it's more down to you based on what is out there at this stage of Bitcoin Treasury development to kind of build a portfolio where that's a part of it, and then you might have some gold, which is a different asset, is not the same, and then you have got some other credit, credit instrument, other investment, you invest in AI, you invest, oil and gas and tech.
Thanks.
That's it. I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.